Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Relatable Radio Hour with me, Dr. Green. Thank you so very much for joining in again. Tonight we have a great topic and a great guest that I'll be introducing to you shortly. But it's a really important topic. I know I say that every week, but I really do mean this one because I think even if it's not you accomplishing goals or just trying to do something that's important, I think a lot of people can be discouraged by things that happen to them, things that are going on socially, things that are going on through injustice or just in other areas of our lives. You can be discouraged and you can kind of fall flat because you just don't feel the need to fight or to stand for something. So even when times get really hard and things get really difficult, you still have to be able to fight through that thing, whatever that thing may be. And as I was thinking about this particular topic, it was one brother that came to mind. We've never connected. And this is another brother of Alpha Phi Alpha. And I know I've been bringing so many wonderful brothers to the show and platform, but just get used to it. They're coming. So just be prepared. I've been a friend with him on Facebook for a while, and we've actually connected on Facebook. But he's been doing some amazing things in this particular area, the area of advocacy. I'd like to introduce to you all a very just amazing brother Jesuorobo Enobakhare. Thank you so very much for joining us, brother. How are you doing?
Dr. Green, first of all, brother, thank you for allowing me to come on your podcast. I really do appreciate it, man. And, it's amazing, this brotherhood of Alpha Phi Alpha, man. I mean, I've been seeing you just doing some good work, especially during the pandemic, because I think we connected probably around that time or what have you, man. And I'm just so proud of the work that you've been doing just to help those around you and to reach out and be what I see, man. I see you being a sea of healing for people, helping us, take hard looks at ourselves, having us look at our reflections, having us see the good in us. We may not feel as good, helping us to really champion those small accomplishments that we've made and stack those up to become huge ones. I thank you for the encouragement that you provide, man, and it's just nuggets of wisdom that you always put out into the atmosphere. Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Well, I sincerely appreciate that. I think you know as well as I do that sometimes it's hard to try to, encourage and spread that positivity. But I do appreciate, just the acknowledgement of what I've been trying to do. And you're right. I mean, I think around that pandemic time is when I really started to make that push towards it. I think one great thing to say to that is that the ability of the internet and social media platforms, you can push positivity even to people who are in different states, different parts of the world. And I'm glad that what I was doing was able to be presented to you in that space as well, because this is how we connected. So I thank you so very much for saying that. But I would love for you just to share with the audience, a little bit about yourself, what you do, and the importance of what you do. I didn't give you credit on your title just yet, but I would love for you just to kind of go into depth of your title and just kind of explaining to us all that you do and what has brought you here today.
Okay. I am a community advocate. There's a difference between an activist and an advocate, meaning that I'm advocating for members of my community. I am the voice for the voiceless. I'm also the chairman for the Social Action Advocacy Committee for the Texas District of Alpha Phi Alpha. And so my role is to organize our chapters to be a force for advocacy throughout the state of Texas for a lot of the issues that impact the communities that we serve. And those issues are anything from the fact that mortality rates are 3 times higher for Black women that are going through maternal issues than for those of their white Hispanic counterparts. Of course, we know voting, our right to vote seems to always be in jeopardy due to laws that some of our state legislatures are creating in the instance of battling or combating this voter fraud that's non-existent. But not only that, but just normal issues such as education, um, jobs, things of that nature. Just being a voice for those that feel as though their governments are not there for them. Usually, when someone says their vote doesn't count, they're not necessarily talking about their actual vote. They're talking about the fact that they don't feel as though their government actually sees them as a person and a human being. And so that's what my job is, to allow for those that I support, those that I advocate, those that I represent to be seen. And so it's not an easy job because of the fact that it's so much easier to just complain and then go about your business than to actually take that complaint, take the disappointment, and push for change. And so I didn't always do this. I don't come from a family of activists or advocates. I'm from a small town in Louisiana, Monroe, Louisiana, educated, Tulane University, Grambling State University, University of Texas at Arlington. And my actual field is computer science. I have an IT slash business administration hybrid job that has absolutely nothing to do with advocacy. So my advocacy is something that I'm not getting paid for, but it's something that is my passion. I have been in communities that have had few resources, and so I know what it's like. And so I want to be the change agent, the leader in the communities that I serve that I didn't have when I was growing up.
I think when you put it in perspective of not coming from a family of advocacy or advocates, it just kind of shapes in my mind that this was something that came from your heart. You had a heart to do this, to be an advocate, to be that voice for those people. You brought up so many wonderful points, especially as it relates to voting rights and the healthcare disparities. I want to get into all of that, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't start with just kind of like the very first question, because we're talking about standing up for what's right and doing what's not easy. Being an advocate, it's not easy. It's very hard. It's very tough. But there has to be a heart to it. But I'm asking you, I'm probably already knowing the answer to it, but what is it about being an advocate that makes you want to continue to be a part of this? Or what, better yet, what even drew your interest into it?
So I'll be very frank, and I'm going to be very transparent. I've always focused on voting and paid attention to voting issues, what have you, but never really paid too much attention to the issues around me. Noticed them, saw them on the news, kind of just went on about my day. But it was something about Tamir Rice's the way he was killed within seconds of being seen with a toy gun. That just kind of it really bothered me. Um, and so at that point, you know, I just said a prayer to God. Hey, God, put me in a position where I can make a difference. And so one of the first things I did was I joined my city's uh, police review board. It was called the Citizens Review Board. I live in the city of Dallas, the city of Dallas's Citizens Review Board. And I quickly learned that that board didn't have a lot of power. I also wanted to learn more about the Texas Democratic Party because of the fact that we all know that African Americans, Black people, we tend to vote Democrat probably 80 to 90% of the time. However, the party leadership doesn't necessarily look like us at the state level, especially here in Texas. So so I started getting involved with the Democratic Party. One of the things I noticed is that weren't there many Black people showing up to meetings, and so I really pushed to get more Black people to show up. I was even talked into running for office within the Texas Democratic Party, and so I became a member of the Texas Democratic Party Executive Committee, and so I was called an executive committee man. And my job basically was we were the governing body for the Texas Democratic Party. One of the things I've realized is that there are not a lot of Black people that are on the Texas Executive Committee for the Texas Democratic Party. Not a lot of Black people want to be on it, but a lot of Black people feel that the Democratic Party needs to do more. Well, what people don't realize is that the Democratic Party is all of us that vote Democrat. It's not just this body of people
Right.
that are in that are in at the Capitol. And so getting people to understand that we have to do and we have to push for the things that we want to change. Give me one second, let me get a sip of water.
Mm-hmm.
We have to push for the things that we change, meaning that being popular, that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy. Being popular, you're just following trends. You're just
Mm-hmm.
kind of going with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing whatever it is that makes people happy. When you were younger, you know, we follow different trends as far as how we dressed, how we cut our hair, things of that nature. However, doing what's right, you know, pushing for change, seeing a need, taking a lead, that's not popular because of the fact that you're stepping against the grain many times. And a lot of times the loudest voice isn't necessarily the right voice.
Right.
And so, but most people listen to that loud, popular voice
You do.
as opposed to the voice of reason, the voice of righteousness, the voice of right. And so, you know, I realized that okay, although this Democratic Party is our option for voting because of the fact that the Republican Party tends to be more focused on bigotry and racism, I realized that the Democratic Party really isn't even the answer either, as long as all we're doing is voting and not actually taking up power and taking up leadership. And so I realized that this wasn't working. So I got back active in Alpha Phi Alpha, and
Mm-hmm.
I was focused on our national program, Voteless People is Hopeless People, because I felt that, okay, at the state level, I'm not getting the success that I thought I would. Let me get into the grassroots local level, door to door, you know, phone calls, just talking to people, listening to some of the issues and their concerns, and finding ways to help get those concerns addressed. Because when you're talking about politics and advocacy, it's all local. It is all local. Usually, when people have issues with things in their community, there are things that can be solved at a local level. Now, it costs money to solve most problems. Now, we have to get that money. Generally, there's a combination of it at the local level, county level, state level, federal level. And so that's where government comes in at, where, okay, the government is going to make a promise of some type of program or some type of initiative, but they have to tie a dollar amount to it and make sure that that dollar amount gets funneled to the local area. And so the thing is when I'm advocating, not just advocating, yes, we need X, Y, and Z, but also educate on how do we get X, Y, and Z, and how do we maintain X, Y, and Z. Because there's one thing to win a battle, but the most important thing is to hold on to that victory.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we've seen, ever since the end of Civil War, the oppressor has been trying to get their lick back ever
Mm-hmm.
since the end of it. Even though they lost, they've been doing their best to try to take away all of the hard gains that we as Black Americans have achieved since that time. And so we have to be forever vigilant. And so that's where my advocacy lies in is okay, we know that someone has a concerted effort to oppress us. We got to push back. But in order for us to push back, we got to realize what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the most important and powerful way to kind of look at that, because when you are just kind of doing stuff blindly and not really knowing the why or the how to actually get to the root of the problem, you're just really wasting a lot of time. So with the topic at hand, I mean, you've rolled up your sleeves, you've gotten into the hard stuff, and you've, kind of made your claim, and you found a really great way to kind of speak on this on the level of the fraternity and doing it on a local level. As it relates to, probably the very first thing that you saw to be a challenge that was hard to stand hard to fight for, but you stood your ground on it. If you can kind of think back, what do you think one of those first issues at hand were to be, maybe on the local level or another level that you thought was just very important to stand on, and how did you get through it?
So I will say that that policing issue was really a tough one
Mm-hmm.
because we're starting to see as you pay attention to it, there were just young Black men and women just being killed left and right by the police, unarmed. And
Mm-hmm.
then you're seeing, white counterparts walking around with guns shooting up movie theaters that are and
Mm-hmm.
churches that are being taken into custody with little to no effort on
Mm-hmm.
law enforcement's part. And so you saw this would appear to be just an inappropriate use of force when it came to Black bodies as opposed to white ones. Now,
Mm-hmm.
how do you how do you address that? Well, of course, at the local level, again, I was on this committee that really wasn't doing much.
Mm-hmm.
But then I saw that there were activists in the city that were pushing for change. They were pushing to bring oversight to the city, and so um, thankfully, the board that I was serving on, the chairman also saw the need for change, and so I was I was able to work with these advocates, these activists. It was a broad coalition of activists and different organizations that worked with the city to create an actual oversight entity for the city of Dallas. And
Mm-hmm.
then after it was created, I became the first chairman for that oversight board, which provided the power um, for a civilian that had issues with how they were treated with the police or concerns about how policing is handled in their communities, a means for them to speak up and to speak out, depending on the issue. Also means for some independent investigation into some complaints that were made lodged against the police department, as well as looking into critical incidents such as someone being killed by the police under questionable circumstances and things of that nature. Which those are some things that I was really concerned about, and so that was one thing because when you're deciding to go up against a sacred cow like policing, most people are not going to go up against policing or the establishment and the unions and things of that nature. And so when you decide to do that, that's not an easy thing to do. It's definitely not something that you're going to get an easy victory on.
Right.
But it was very, very satisfying to see something that I had prayed for to come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Not the creation of the board, but the fact that I simply prayed for God to use me, and He used me in a way that was able to create change. And
Mm-hmm.
so I know I was kind of long-winded with it, but
No.
that was the big challenge for me.
And that was quite a big challenge. I think it's so interesting that like when you pretty much prayed to God that this is something that you wanted to do, He gave you that, but also gave you that particular thing that was placed in your heart to really address. And it sounds like, and I don't know if this is what I'm hearing, but it sounds like once you were able to see how it was to stand your ground, to give your voice the action that it was needing, it sounds like it gave you the confidence to continue to do more and to take on more just overbearing types of things. At this point, and working in advocacy, what do you think? Um, what have you kind of observed to be the most challenging obstacles? And let's just say African Americans. Let's use our community. What are the most challenging circumstances that you have seen that we have been a part of that have really just kind of blew your mind in just kind of being in this place of advocacy?
The one thing that has really blown my mind is the depth of our apathy,
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that we know that united,
Mm-hmm.
there is so much we can accomplish. When we join together and in partnership and collaboration and wield our power in unity, there is so much that we can accomplish. I look at a map of the United States and see where the concentration of African Americans are. Louisiana, Mississippi, the South, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the concentration of Black people are. And yet in many of those areas, we're not in power. We're not empowering a lot of governments. There should be far more state congressional seats held by Black people in southern states. There should be far more Black governors in some of the southern states. And definitely the laws that are in the books definitely should not be laws that penalize us for simply being Black. And so I look at a lot of our organizations, our Divine Nine organizations. And that's one of the things that led to me being active and leading social action, is that we do an awesome job when it comes to charity. We will will do a coat drive that no one can compete with, or setting up turkey dinners for
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving and a Christmas
Mm-hmm.
dinner package. Oh man, you can't beat that. Raising money, we cannot be beat when it comes to that. But when it comes to actually advocating for change, when it comes to taking on unjust laws, unjust policies, unjust decisions made by state governments that negatively impact us, such as taking away DE&I, or
Mm-hmm.
even when they were attacking the phantom critical race theory that was
Mm-hmm.
not taught in any schools. And as a side note, critical race theory, because of the fact that it didn't exist, that was just a dress rehearsal to see how far they could go before they
Right.
decided to tackle DEI.
DEI, right.
And one thing that I've seen in my observation is just how those that choose to oppress us, they a decade or so ago, they kind of dipped their toe in the water to see how far they could go without getting pushed back. And when they saw that they weren't getting pushed back, they kept pushing forward. And when they saw that no one was pushing back, they decided, you know what? We can take on and do some things that, 20, 30 years ago, we will be seen as racist for doing this. We will be seen as bigots for doing this. But
Right.
now we can do it. And not only that, but branches of government, whole political parties are supporting us in doing this. And we're doing it unashamedly.
Mm-hmm.
We can be true hypocrites and nobody's going to call us on our hypocrisy. And so it's up to us, our organizations that should be taking the lead and fighting back, pushing back. But not only that, but we can't do it alone. We have to go into our communities and understand what it is that our communities are dealing with. And so I think one of the things is our apathy. I think that there is almost a line that's been created between the Divine Nine and those that are not members of the Divine Nine, especially when it comes to men.
Mm-hmm.
And where we're not united in fighting the same fight, even though we have the same challenges. Even though some of us may have a luxury car and a multi-story house, that does not mean that we've made it. That does not mean that we are free from oppression. And
Right.
so we have to realize that, hey, we're all in this fight together. No one's going to do the fight for us. We have to lift up each other and we have to take on the fight ourselves.
Mm-hmm. But again, that apathy that you spoke to, I mean,
Mhm.
it's just in all facets. Like when you said that, that really hit home for me. And of course, what you just said about the Divine Nine, I completely understand that too. And that is definitely a thing. You can just kind of see that to be exactly what it is, especially amongst fraternities.
Mhm.
Um, but I just want to stay on that apathy part for just a second. Uh, what would you find yourself saying to individuals who were kind of proclaiming this sense of apathy amongst your community while you were kind of working in that space, seeing it, observing it? What types of conversations were you having with these people when you saw it? And not only the conversations, but like, what responses did you get when you kind of woke them up to, how they were kind of reacting in the face of just kind of just not having the mentality or the demeanor that they should have as it relates to the challenges that we've been facing?
Well, I think the thing that we have to realize is that we all have leaders. We all have people that we look up to. We all have people that we get our information from. And some of that information may not necessarily be the most correct information, meaning
Mm-hmm.
that when it comes to voting, one, you have some people that feel that where there's no sense in voting, they already know who they want in office. Well,
Yes.
when you say that, and you decide not to vote, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yes, they do know who they want in office. However, in order for that to happen, they have to win the election. And
Right.
so, one, we have to not fall for that banana in the tailpipe logic. But two is, we have communities that just have not changed no matter who's in office,
Mm-hmm.
no matter whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president, those communities are still dealing with issues, whether it's, them being a food desert, or whether them being a banking desert, they do not have the resources necessary in order to have a thriving life. When you have a community where the children aren't even getting the nutrients that they need in order to develop. When you have a community where there aren't jobs for the men in the community and the women in the community, you know, voting is the least of their worries. And so what you have to do is you have to create hope, because without hope you don't have anything. And
That's
so
right.
you have to bring hope to the communities. And in order to do that, you have to talk about, okay, how can we make change? And we can't do it all at once. But
Mm-hmm.
there are small things, incremental things that we can do to spark change. But it does take us taking on sometimes our governments, meaning that we're gonna have to fight to get grocery stores into our communities. And what does that look like? It may not be a big chain grocery store. It may be a community co-op that you may have to create. We have to find a way to get banking into our communities. May not get a city or a uh, uh, any of the major banks, but may not be a Truist or Capital
Mm-hmm.
One, but there are smaller banks. So one of the things I decided to do was start on. I found out about a black bank, and I started putting my money into the black bank. And you know what? I haven't missed a step as far as Matter of fact, the black bank that I have, I get my paycheck, you know, 2 days early
Mm.
and then my mainstream bank, a white bank. So, you know, things like that. But you have to bring hope. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to encourage people, meaning that for someone who doesn't vote, for someone who feels as though government is not there for them, that's where an advocate steps in and is that bridge between them and government to help to get things fixed, resolve issues addressed in their community. Because we look to the presidential elections for change. We don't. A lot of us don't vote in local elections or state elections, but every 4 years when it's time for president,
Hmm.
we're voting for president, hoping that that president is going to address issues near and dear to us, when really those issues near and dear to us are through those local elections.
Right.
And
Right.
so again, for someone who doesn't vote, being an advocate, showing them what their city council can do for them, but not only showing them, but actually pushing to get it
Right.
done,
Right.
where the city council comes through for them, or
Right.
the school board comes through for them, or their county commissioners court resolves the issue for them. And that's where they get hope. That's where they see, okay, I like the city council member. Let me get to know them. Let me, I need to vote for them because of the fact that now they're seeing how things work. But the key is the education piece. The key is providing hope, but also being making true on promises made,
Mm.
and showing them that the needle can be changed, and showing them that we are a trusted partner in helping them to get some of the issues that they're dealing with addressed.
Mm-hmm. And that is so very true. I was just kind of thinking when you were uh, sharing that you have to provide that hope and to give them a glimpse, and not only a glimpse, but actually show them that this is what can happen and what should be happening. I
Mhm.
was thinking to myself, in your line of experience, and I'll just ask it, have you seen that it's been easier to deliver that sense of hope to the baby boomers, the older population of individuals, or the younger generations? Which one have you seen the most? I wouldn't say success, but maybe who has gravitated to the idea that the change can actually be implemented the most?
So I'm going to be so to be honest, both. Let me start with the older community. I
Mhm.
remember when I was first started working to help to get police oversight created in the city of Dallas, there was an older gentleman I'll never forget. He was like, "Man, why should I trust you? You're not even from Dallas." And so I said, "You know what? You're so right." And he said, "You know what? You're probably just doing this so that you can run for office at some point. We are tired of educated people like yourself coming here and making these promises, and you sound good, just to turn around and run for office." I said, "Hey, I am not doing this to run for office. I am doing this because this is the work that needs to be done."
Right.
And so ever so often, the gentleman would call me. I gave him my number. He would call me, and he had some things he'd want to talk about or what have you. And so a few years later, after I'm in position of the oversight board chairman, and he called me. We were talking. I said, "Hey, remember we were talking, and you said, man, I'm not from Dallas, and this, that, and other." He was like, "You know what, son? I apologize. You've really made a believer out of me, and I really do appreciate the things that you're doing." Not only that, he still calls me today, even though I'm no longer chairman. We still talk, and it's great when you see someone who doesn't trust you, that doesn't believe in you, and you earn their trust.
Absolutely.
For the younger generation, I think it's more a more a matter of listening, and as opposed to telling them what I think they should believe and I think they should do, listen to their concerns and helping them find solutions. Because I tell you, this younger generation, they are our future, and a lot of them are equipped and prepared to make change. A lot of them are very, very discouraged with the way things are happening, and they're discouraged with a lot of us because of our inaction. And so, one of the things that I like is that they're taking the bull by the horns, especially with them getting into the streets and protesting and things of that nature. I think that is just incredible on what they're doing. One of the things that I'm concerned about, though, is just kind of the thought process of some of our generation. Like, for instance, this DE&I type deal, where a lot of us are starting to say, well, hey, if our athletes don't go to these big schools, they're gonna have to make changes to this. And I'm like, nah, that's not how it works. One, we should not be asking our children to do things that we wouldn't do. Meaning, none of us are gonna walk off of our jobs. None of us are gonna just quit our jobs because of the fact that our jobs are supporting some companies that we don't believe in. So why are we telling our children to put their education
Right.
in jeopardy, put their futures in jeopardy, doing things that we're not going to put ourselves in jeopardy? Our children should never be bargaining chips for politics or policy, meaning that it's not the schools that are driving these anti-DEI policies. These are not the schools that are driving discrimination. It's the governments. And guess what? That's on us. We need to be addressing this with our elected officials and pushing them and pushing back on them when they are creating policies that are harmful to us. We don't need to be trying to push our children into doing things with the hopes that this easy button here is going to
Right.
fix things. And so that type of those type of conversations. Remember what I said earlier about people that are providing inaccurate information?
Yep.
Those are conversations that are taking place that are just basically just short circuiting any conversation about change. And we have to realize that all opinions aren't equal, and some people shouldn't have a voice in the conversation. I hate to say that, but not everybody is equipped to have a conversation on what are some things that we can do to solve problems. And so when that person takes the conversation off track with some of that, and I'm just going to say foolishness, we have to get everything back on track, or, we are going to miss the boat. And so I think that we have to address, we as the adults, we have to address these issues head on. We also have to have a multi-generational approach, meaning that we need to make sure that our younger generation is also a part of the problem solving and solution building, because of the fact that they have a stake in this as well, because they're going to inherit all of this. So, let's make sure we're listening. But I think the most important thing is, again, we have to work together, because you can best believe that those who want to oppress us, oh man, they are working together. Whether they're on the school board, whether they're on the city council, whether they're on state government, or they are all reading from the same script. And so I'm not saying we have to be like them, but we have to realize that we have to work together to push back and push forward against oppression, and to ensure that we get the liberation that was promised to us, the liberation that our ancestors have fought for, and for us to fulfill it, so that our younger generation doesn't have to fight as hard.
I think there's this understanding that the younger generation, they already don't work hard, and they feel this sense of, oh well, if the older generation doesn't do it, then don't put it in the hands of the younger kids. They don't even like to work, which I think is a very skewed way of being. From what it sounds like they are very much ready and willing to take the hard thing and run with it and do what's needed to be done, which I think is a great point to bring up, because I think as older individuals, we tend to think that if we don't do it, then it won't get done. How do you think that the younger generation can take what has already been created and like take it to a whole new level? Because we do have some younger listeners as well. I think that they need to be very much empowered into knowing how to really take a stand and to do it well. But how do you think that they can take what's already been created and take it to a new level?
I think one thing, when we talk about, the younger generation, they don't work and they don't do this, that, and the other. Sometimes it's not about working hard. Sometimes it's about working smart.
Smarter, right.
And these children, the younger generation, they're asking a lot of whys. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And if you can't give them an answer that makes sense, they're not going to do it.
That's
right. And you know what? It's okay to take down some sacred cows. We have some sacred cows that we won't take down. We have some Black leaders that we'll in whispers we'll talk about their inefficiency, but in public we won't. Some of our Black organizations have had the same leader for multiple decades. That's a dictatorship. And when you look at dictatorships are not created by someone who has just this overwhelming power. Dictatorships are created when the people around don't do anything to fight. When their supporters just kind of let them take power, and they complain, but as long as it doesn't really affect me, hey, you go ahead. And so you have these organizations that have the same leader for 20 plus years. And when you have the same leader for 20 plus years, there are not a lot of fresh ideas coming in. And so the organization doesn't have the effectiveness that it had back 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when, those ideas were cutting edge. And so our younger generation sees that, and a lot of times they're not just going to go along to get along. They either are not going to participate or they're going to create their own thing. And so I admire them for their courage. Again, they are our future. They're going to inherit all of this. And so I think that we really have to work in partnership with them, meeting them where they are. I mean, a lot of times we think about we need to lift the young. We don't need to lift them up. We need to meet them where they are. And meeting them where they are doesn't necessarily mean we have to go down. Sometimes meeting them where they are means we need to look up.
That's
And
right.
so, we have to trust that our younger generation knows exactly what it is that they want. And we need to partner with them to get some of those things accomplished because of the fact that what they're asking for is no different than what we're asking for. They just may be seeing it a different way.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you kind of shared just that candidness because it's easy to think that, when you're working with younger people, you have to look down instead of looking up because, let's just face it. I mean, they got the technology game on lock. They know the different ways to get people's attention. They TikTok, they do other things that, are going to draw the attention. And so it's a lot of different platforms and different strategies that they have that we don't even know about. And so, alerting them and just kind of embracing them on the same level, I think is the way instead of looking down. I think that looking down perspective comes from so many other societal things, but maybe that's another topic for another day. But I appreciate you sharing that point. I think that's really important. I really want to bring to light, the fact of empowering our youth so that they can, be aware that look, you are the future. And however you're going to be able to still be an impact and be advocates for what's right, that's okay. It's not as though you have to do it the same way, but we want you to be able to be aware of it, acknowledge it, and be able to handle it when it comes your way. As it relates to Texas, and you shared a couple of things, and I'm in Mississippi, so we're both in kind of similar spaces with a lot of stuff. I heard you mention voting, education, and health care disparities. I think that's probably the top three things that are really big challenges in Mississippi. And there are so many, legislative laws that are currently in place that, make it really difficult to really seek the change that's needed. And Mississippi, of course, is a deep red state. Let me say that again. And it is, statewide, a Republican state. So there's a lot of strongholds that are currently in place. I like to think that Texas is the same, but I feel like Texas is a little bit more Democratic in some spaces, more so than Mississippi. Where would you say the top three that I just named? Where would you say they are as it relates to getting better or worse than it was, since you've been in this world of advocacy?
So, healthcare, education, voting. I will say that one, Texas is a deep red state, but I think Texas is not just a deep red state. Texas is a deep non-voting state. There are a
Okay.
lot of people
That's
don't vote in Texas.
yeah.
Not just black people. A lot of white people don't vote in Texas either.
I should have said
And
the same thing too.
yeah, so when you have so many people that don't vote,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have these people that are in office that are
Hmm.
basically in office because of the fact that
They don't vote.
the majority of 30% voted them in, and the 70% that didn't vote was like, hey, y'all go ahead and handle this.
Hmm.
And so we have a state where we have a governor that's trying to take money away from public school. Public schools are already underfunded. They're trying to take money away from that and give it to vouchers so that people can take that state money, those tax dollars, and pay for their children to go to private schools. Well, one thing we know is that that voucher is not enough to help a poor person pay for private school. But that voucher is more than enough for someone who has the means to save money by not having to pay the full amount for their child to go to private school. But you know what? Let me get my child out of public schools where they're around a lot of these black and brown students. And so the thing is that when you are underfunding something, you're defunding something that's already underfunded, that is an issue. And when you have federal dollars that are being sent to the state to help fund education, but the state government says, nope, not going to take it. Money that will ensure that there are no hungry children at any of the schools, whether it's during the school year or out. But you decided we don't want to take that money, but yet you want to take state money and give it to your friends and supporters so that they can pay for their children to go to private school. That is an issue there. And then when it comes to healthcare, well, Texas has a high number of uninsured residents. And when the Obamacare was made into law, Texas pushed back on opening up Medicaid to the entire state, which could have helped to lift so many people out of poverty because of the fact that now they don't have to worry about paying for health care because of the fact that they'll have some assistance there. Not only that, but it also would move a lot of people away from just getting medical care from the emergency room and burdening our emergency services, where now they can get a primary care physician, they can do preventive care. That's going to cut down on a lot of the issues, the health issues that a lot of black and brown people are dealing with. And so when you look at healthcare, when you look at health expectancy and life expectancy and quality of life issues, it's not that we as black people are more prone to health challenges because of our lifestyles, things that of that nature. It's because of public policy. It's because of the policy of our governments is the reason why we have some of the health issues that we have, because of the fact that public health could be looked at completely different. Healthcare could be looked at completely different if you really were looking at making sure that all of your citizens, all of your residents had adequate access to affordable health care. If you're looking at a more educated state, if you're looking at the fact, you know what, we need to make sure that our children, that those learning within this state are not just being taught to a test, but we're actually teaching them how to think critically. We're teaching them, you know, how to read at their reading level, how to do mathematics, things of that nature. But not only how to read, how to do mathematics, but how to use those skills in critical thinking and critical problem solving. That's how you measure education, not by how well someone does on a test. Not everyone is a good test taker. That doesn't mean that they're not intelligent because of the fact that they don't do well on a test. So when you're looking at education and healthcare, those are the things that it's not because we're bad people, it's not because we're making bad choices, it's because of the choice that the government is making that's impacting us. And then voting. Well, I remember when I moved to Texas back in 2000, the only thing you needed in order to vote was a voter registration card. You didn't need to come in with a special ID. All you needed was the voter registration card. And let's be honest. Most crimes are committed when someone has something to gain. There is absolutely nothing to gain by committing voter fraud. Why would you break federal law for something that has so little so little reward?
Right.
And then, they started with voter ID, where you had to have a certain type of driver's license in order to vote. Now, what always hurts our community is the fact that we listened to the logic of the oppressor. The logic was, hey, you need a check, you need to have shown ID in order to write a check or use a credit card. Well, hey, when you go to vote, you're not at the grocery store. When you go to vote, you're not paying for anything. And so therefore, that's not logic that you should be using. But that's the logic that we use. And as a result of that, it passed. But what was so sinister is that it wasn't that you had to just show an ID. You had to have a specific ID in Texas, meaning that you couldn't just go and vote with your state issued college ID.
Right.
You had to have a state issued driver's license. You had to have or a state issued ID, or check this out. You could vote if you had your hunting license or your concealed handgun license. You could vote with that. But if you went to the University of Texas, your University of Texas ID with your picture on and your name, that's not good enough to vote on. And so they didn't just stop there. You know, they decided during the pandemic, when more people were using they were using absentee voting or mail-in voting.
Yeah.
Well, they were like, oh no, we got to stop this. And so now with absentee voting and mail-in voting here in Texas, the signature that you place on your application for a mail-in ballot has to match the signature of your original voter registration. So the voter registration that you signed untold decades ago, your signature on that mail-in ballot application has to match. And if it doesn't, your mail-in ballot application is void. That is to stop people from voting.
Right.
And also, you had to have a valid ID. Your driver's license couldn't be expired. Now, they made some changes where it can be a certain number of years. But say you're someone that's elderly. Say you're 85 years old and you no longer drive anymore. Why do you need to go and renew your driver's license? If your address on your license is still the same, why do you need to go? And that's just an undue burden that you're having. The fact that somebody has to go out and pay for an ID, that's almost like a poll tax. And so not only that, but they're pushing for, they don't want our votes to be counted electronically. They want votes to be counted by hand. That's just a recipe for this for destruction. You mean to tell me that you want to trust the full vote count by hand? We have all this wonderful technology that can do it instantaneously. You are setting us up for human error. But what it is that they're trying to find ways to create an environment for voter fraud. So they can say,
right,
I told you voter fraud was there.
right,
But they're trying to create an environment where voter fraud can flourish. So then they can say that voter fraud exists. So
that's the thing, right?
Yeah. So, and no one was thinking about voter ID or voter fraud or anything of that nature prior to President Obama becoming president. So this black man became president, and they decided, oh yeah, they have to be cheating. There is no way that this country could elect a black man. But really, it wasn't that they were thinking that someone cheated. It was that, you know what, we got to stop this from happening. We can't allow this to happen again.
Right.
And so that's the reason why all of these voter ID laws in all these other states and making it harder to vote by mail, and making it harder to register to vote. They're doing that because of the fact that they don't want this growing population of black and brown people to expand their voting power. We need to contract. Let's contract this voting. Let's lower voter turnout. Let's do all of that, because the lower the voter turnout is, the better our chances of staying in power.
Right. That's right.
And so that's what we're seeing, and we're seeing it in a lot of, especially in the South, we're seeing a lot of states where we're really trying to push hard to contract the voting populace, and they're trying to push hard to make it harder for us to vote. And
Yeah.
that's something that we have to push back on.
It's really huge. And of course, with this being an election year, I mean, we're seeing it more and more seemingly every day, especially on the local level. I mean, you talked about it first. That's probably one of the first things that we talked about is that it's on that local level. Like everything that we're seeing on this national level started within our community. And I think with this being that election year and November coming up pretty soon, I think every day we're going to see something that is more focused on that very thing to try to, reduce the amount of people to vote because they want to continue to hold that control. But that, of course, that's a whole different animal, a different beast in itself. But I want to bring it back to you and everything that you've been doing. You've done a lot and you were awakened into being into this space and you prayed for opportunities to come your way so that you can, do what you've been purposed to do, which is to be an advocate, and you're doing amazing things at it. Not everybody is built with it. You are. But let's say someone that's listening resonates with everything that you're saying. Maybe they have this case that has just opened their eyes to being an advocate and working towards injustices. What type of advice would you tell that person that's listening right now that had or has that same feeling that you had? And what would you say to them to kind of move on the role of being an advocate, working in advocacy? What would you tell them?
One thing I would tell them is that one, you are already equipped. Don't think that you're not enough. The fact that you have the passion to see and want change, that in itself can fuel your efforts to create change. Also, start small. Start within your local area of pushing for change. And you'll start to see it. It's going to take some time. You have to be patient. But if you continue, if you persevere, you're going to see that your efforts are bearing fruit. I think that the one thing is to make sure that that you have faith, that you believe in yourself, that you believe in. I'm a Christian. I'm not saying that everyone has to be a Christian, but there may be some higher power or something that fuels your faith. Rely on that faith and make sure that you have those around you that share your passion as well, because of the fact that you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And and there's going to be times where there's going to be disappointment. There are going to be times when you're discouraged, but to stay encouraged, sometimes you have to take a break to regroup and to recharge, but never give up.
Love it. One word that affirms who you are.
You know what? I'm about to go with my line name, purpose.
That's a pretty dope line name, man.
Yep, purpose.
Purpose. So why purpose?
I could say why was my line name purpose or why the word purpose? I don't know if we need to talk about why my line name was purpose.
Well, let's know just why you chose purpose.
You, you know,
Something completely different. Yeah.
yeah. So now I'm just joking, man. But the reason why I say purpose is because of the fact that we all have a purpose for being here. We weren't just born by happenstance. And when you realize what your purpose is for being here, that's when
Mhm.
you truly start living your life to your fullest. And so
100%.
that's why I say purpose.
I'm so glad that you said that because I think the more people hear it, the more they believe it. Sometimes that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but if you know your purpose, I mean, that is really when you start living. And
Oh man.
I know for you, you know, since you have been awakened in this place, this platform, you know, every day you're working, but it doesn't feel like you're working. You're doing
Not at
something
all.
that you know that you were created on this earth to do.
Not at all. And the thing about it is that when you find your purpose, it doesn't just propel you in that area of purpose. It helps in all aspects of your life. It helps in your relationships. It helps on your job because of the fact that when you're living in your purpose, everything is clicking. Now, that doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that things are going to be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're living in your purpose, you're finding fulfillment in your life. When you're fighting your purpose, I mean, it's rough. I fought my purpose
Mm-hmm.
for years,
Yeah.
and when you're fighting it, man, that's heavy on you, man. You
Mm-hmm.
you you're looking in all the wrong places for happiness and satisfaction. You know, you are always avoiding what's right in front of your face. People are telling you that they see these things in you that you refuse to see in yourself. But once you accept your purpose, oh man, it opens up so many doors, man. It's just incredible. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I say when you find out what your purpose is, that's when you truly start living life
Mm-hmm.
to the fullest.
100%. 100%. Brother Enobakhare, thank you so very much for sharing your journey with us because you've been standing your ground, doing what's not easy, but it's your purpose. And that's how I know you're going to continue to do well in it because um, you're living your life now. You're living it. You're actually doing, breathing what you should be doing on the first place. So I appreciate you for coming on and sharing your journey with us. I know a lot of people were able to get some great nuggets from your story and your journey. So thank you again for joining. Um, we'd like to leave the show just to kind of leave with a sense of gratefulness. So, if you could think about one thing that you're grateful for today, what would that be?
Man, I would tell you, brother, um, I'm grateful for you. There were times during the pandemic where, you know, that the isolation was starting to weigh heavy on me, and there were many days when you would post your little videos, your videos of encouragement, and
Right.
and and there were some days when those videos got me through. I'm grateful for you, man. I really am. I appreciate what you're doing. It's awesome to see how your platform is rising. I'm proud to see the growth, and you know I just can't wait to see what happens in the future. I got to come out to Mississippi, got to come out to Jackson and hang out. And I got to get me a Stamps burger while I'm out there, man. So, yes, sir. Yes,
We can make
sir.
it happen. We can make it happen. This is the
Definitely.
home of the Stamsburger. You got to
Oh,
get
yeah.
one. You got to get
Definitely.
one. Well,
Definitely.
thank you so much for saying that because I've had several conversations. And I think we kind of talked about this at one point in time where I was like, you know, wanting to kind of stop doing the videos altogether. But it's conversations like you and I have shared and what you just shared just then, and other people kind of saying the same thing that made me continue to do it. But yeah, it's not easy to try to spread positivity and trying to encourage people. And there were a lot of times where I didn't want to do it anymore, but I'm grateful that I was able to push through and allow for things like this to happen. So from your mouth to God's ears, we'll see where He takes this whole platform and everything that I'm trying to do. I'm gonna kind of leave that to be my gratefulness to say that I'm grateful that what I was doing, what God had put me in place to do, I didn't stop doing.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
this connection wouldn't have happened had I stopped doing it. If I stopped doing it, you wouldn't have seen the videos or you wouldn't have even, drew the meanings or messages that he wanted for me to do to reach people such as yourself. So I'm grateful for that. And I thank you again for bringing that up. I really do. I really appreciate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we just had a great conversation. I hope you were able to gain some great nuggets and information from it. When it's not easy, you still can stand your ground and you can go forth on that very thing. We talked a lot about advocacy in this conversation, but it can transpire into anything as well. Just hold on to what you know is to be right and keep pushing forward with it. So join us next week as we tackle a new topic and a new guest. I hope that you all have a great evening, have a great weekend. See you next week.